Good evening, everyone. I am so pleased today to be hosting a talk to celebrate the opening of Christina Bothwell's show that we just installed and opened on Friday. The exhibition is called Luminous Dreams in Cataclysmic Times, and a very specific title that Christina chose for this. And I'm going to quickly do a little introduction for those of you who may not be as familiar with Christina, and then also Robin Schwartz. This is our fourth solo show with Christina. It features more than a dozen pieces. Some of them you can see here behind me, made over the course of the last year as Christina was processing the societal upheaval of 2020. I love what Christina said about the work. She said that I view my studio time as an anchor, a compass that orients me towards the things in life that feel good and bring me joy. We all needed that this year. I collect moments throughout the day that remind me that life is a gift, that happiness is available and is all around us if only we can take the time to notice. My art is a prayer for a return to innocence and peace, a vision of wholeness in the face of chaos. Christina, who studied painting at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts in Philadelphia, began working three-dimensionally in 1995, and in 1999, she took a glass casting class at the Corning Museum of Glass, which launched her career with the material. She has won numerous scholarships and grants, including a Paula Krasner Foundation grant and a Virginia A. Groot Foundation Award for Excellence in Sculpture. Her sculpture is collected extensively and is represented in private and public collections across the United States, in Europe, and in Asia. Among the many public collections that represent her work is the Corning Museum of Glass, the Racine Art Museum, the Shanghai Museum of Glass, the Mobile Museum of Art in Mobile, Alabama, and the Palm Springs Art Museum in California. So welcome, Christina, and thank you for all the work. Thank you for being here. Congratulations on your show. We are so happy to be doing this virtually, and we'll be happy to hopefully at some point all gather here. As many of you have the opportunity, we hope to see the show in person maybe. Vaccinations are continuing. And we are joined at Christina's invitation by artist and photographer Robin Schwartz. Hello, Robin. Thank you so much for being here with us. Robin is a photographer and a photography professor at William Patterson University in New Jersey. She earned an MFA in photography from Pratt Institute, and her photographs are held in the collections of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Museum of Modern Art, both in New York, Smithsonian American Art Museum in Washington, D.C., the Brooklyn Museum here in Brooklyn, and the Chrysler Museum of Art in Norfolk, Virginia, as well as the Bibliothèque Nationale in Paris and the Museum Folkwang in Essen, Germany. In 2016, Robin was a Guggenheim Fellow in Photography, and her editorial work has appeared in no less than the New York Times, Time Magazine, New Yorker Magazine, and in National Geographic. Robin is best known for her photographs of animals with her daughter, Amelia. Robin has published several books, but her latest book, Amelia and the Animals, was published by Aperture in 2014. Christina and Robin met 2 years ago via Instagram, and they will tell you more about the history of that relationship and their story. So with that, I'm going to start maybe by showing a quick clip that explains Christina's process really nicely. It's from the Craft in America video that was recently made about Christina. Here we go.
Birth and death, who are we and why are we here? Those are the questions that have always plagued me. I'm always interested in new ways to portray that. I am a storyteller and I love stories. If something really touches me, I have to process it and get it out by doing a piece. I try to express the spirit world in my work. I believe that we're much more than our physical bodies. I'm an artist that works with glass, but I'm self-taught. And my pieces, they're not pristine. Most glass artists make work that looks like it's descended right from heaven. And my pieces are like outsider art. You can kind of see the fingerprints and the mistakes and, but I feel like that's my energy in there, and it's part of what makes my work me. Sometimes the whole piece can break apart when I take the heads off. The clay face on this piece has already been fired. Clay is not compatible with glass. A lot of people think I somehow have found a magical way to fire them together, but no. I make the heads first, and then I build my piece with warmed beeswax. Everything in wax is going to be cast glass. I made this piece because no matter how old they are, you always worry about your children. So you're always kind of carrying their weight with you, even though my children are kind of grown now. I don't think I'm ever going to stop. Oops. See, there goes an ear, which will have to be glued on later. I have a lot of children in my pieces. I think that they represent vulnerability. When I had my actual children, they were so entertaining that they were a source of ideas. And I'm still processing, even though it's 13 years later for the twins, 17 for Sophie. I think I'm still processing the fact that I'm somebody's mother. Like wow. I had been working with ceramics. I started feeling like I just had worked myself into a corner with what I was doing. So I kind of went into a creative crisis. I took a glass casting class, and I knew nothing about glass except that I didn't like it because it was so shiny. Within about an hour of taking that workshop, I realized that glass can do everything that clay can, but it transmits light. It had so much potential. Ideas are like dreams. It's almost like there's energy in the piece and we're absorbing it. Hey, Alice, put an apron on?
Yes.
Your hands are good?
I think so.
Put that over your head. I'll take what I had sculpted and wax it up to my studio. I'll make a mold from a mixture of casting plaster, silica powder, and talc. I'll pat it all over the wax. I'll end up with a mold with a flat bottom, which is rested on a Vaseline-covered surface. Once that's set, I'll flip it over, and it will have an opening where I can steam the wax out. The lost wax process used in jewelry is very similar. Once the wax is out, I'll have a mold with a concavity of the figure, like a ghostly presence, the shape of what I had sculpted in wax. Hey, would you do me a favor and put some of those little molds in water so when I demold, they won't break?
Yeah.
Robert and I met at summer camp when we were 14, and then we reunited in New York City 15 years later. Very Harry met Sally, kind of. We have done a number of pieces together. He understands the annealing schedule. He's also really good at providing a separate perspective.
I was doing children's books, but meanwhile, I was helping Christina with her work. We can't help but be influenced by each other, and we definitely support each other tremendously.
I work with cold glass. We break the glass up with a hammer, and then we fill the molds with chunks of glass, and then we'll put it in the kiln. The glass will melt, and as it goes lower and sinks into the mold, we'll have to feed more chunks of glass into the mold until the surface is level. I have a sense of how I want the colors to be, but there's always the element of surprise because the glass flows.
We make sure that the glass is really penetrated into all the crevices and fingers or whatever. And then we drop the kiln quickly down to the annealing temperature. For this particular glass, it's 900 degrees.
The jacket was smoking.
Yeah, you gotta do it fast. The whole annealing process might take 2 days, but for some of the thicker pieces, it'll take maybe 2 to 3 weeks or longer.
Once the annealing's finished, it will be a glass sculpture with the mold around. And then I soak it in water, and I take a hammer and a chisel, I break off the plaster. It's very easy to snap off a foot or an arm. And so sometimes the only thing I can do is just refire the whole thing, start all over. The pieces don't come out nice and smooth. They come out with like sharp shards that can cut your hands. So I'll sand the roughness using diamond grit pads. Once I'm finished polishing it, I can glue the ceramic to the glass, and then I add another layer of narrative to the sculptures by painting on them. I'm the happiest when I'm in nature, being in the woods, and that feeling of just being consumed by nature. Birds and insects, they're a metaphor for irrepressible life force. You can't control them or contain them. My work is very much about that feeling of being safe in nature and nurtured. We had lived in New York City for 7 years and came out here to visit a friend, and it was like I just was taken over by nature. Vegetables grew out of the ground, and there were blue herons and bald eagles, and it just, I realized I had to. We found this little place, and it took about 2 years for the midnight panic attacks to subside because we moved out here without work, without friends, and it was just sort of nature. Now it's been over 20 years, and we have a really good system of friends, and it's beautiful. We have 8 cats, 2 dogs, a snake named Lucy, and a mean pet goose.
I think that video does a really nice job of explaining your process.
Thank you so much, everybody, for coming and for being here. And thank you so much, Katya, for giving me the show, and for Robin, my dear friend Robin, for agreeing to do this. This is so nice. You've heard my story. I was born in New York City, and I lived there for a few years, but I was a very sickly child. My mom was an artist. I was in and out of hospitals with pneumonia, chronic pneumonia, and finally the pediatrician told my parents that they had to get me out of the city if they wanted me to survive. So we moved to the suburbs, and my mom was a hippie. And my kids say, really? A real hippie? And yep, she was a real hippie. And she befriended all the teenagers in our area, and she had drawing and painting classes in our house. So I was working from a nude model from the time I was about 5 or 6 years old. And it was quite common just to have nude people walking around our house with teenagers smoking cigarettes and more. And I always knew I wanted to be an artist. And I went to the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts, and I painted paintings like this. And then after art school and living back in New York City again, I found a ceramic kiln for $10. It's funny how something so small can just change your life. But this $10 ceramic kiln just really showed me that perhaps I wasn't a painter after all. And I started working with clay and mixed media, and these are the kind of pieces that I made. And I got a gallery to show my work in New York, and I had a few shows of the work that I was doing for a few years. And then I took on a whim. I just took this glass casting class at Corning, and it was just amazing. It really lit me up because I realized that glass can do all the things that clay can, but in addition transmits light. And that was an amazing thing. People say, so how do you get your ideas? Usually when I get an idea, it can be from something I've seen or from a dream. And I just have to write it down, a rough sketch in a sketch pad, so I don't forget it. Because like dreams, if you don't write them down right away, they go away. So it's kind of a before and after. I've always been really drawn to animals as my imagery. I've always felt very close to the animals that I grew up with. My parents always had an ongoing rotating menagerie of animals. And from an early age, I could recognize their sense of humanity and their inner beingness as not being any different than ours. And I always knew that animals were no less than us. Like when I make eye contact with a wild animal, I feel like I'm looking at a different version of myself. And so as a child, I think that animals were my best friends. And I was saying to Katya earlier, animals aren't judgmental. As a kid, I was very aware that the animals didn't care if all my clothes came from thrift stores and my parents didn't mow the lawn. So I like to, as I said in the film, I like to try to show the inner beingness of all of us, how we're all connected and we all have a soul. And people say, well, why deer? Because aren't they just like rats that give Lyme disease? But to me, they're just so beautiful. And there's an albino deer that lives around where I live, and I see her a couple times a year. It's amazing. She's managed to survive through 6 or 7 years of hunting seasons, and she's all white with blue eyes. I don't know if she's albino, but she's pretty unusual. When I see her, it's like seeing an angel. So I've done a lot of pieces just based on every time I see her, I feel like I need to make a piece. And there was one time where we were trying to get pregnant and going through infertility treatments, and I was sitting in the woods meditating. This is back before I really understood that because of Lyme disease, you shouldn't sit in the woods, perhaps. And I was meditating, and I opened my eyes, and 2 baby deer had walked right up to me. And I went down to the house and I said to my husband, I think we're going to have twins. And he said, that is so unscientific, honey. But we did have twins. So I got kind of obsessed with getting pregnant when pregnancy didn't come easily. And when it finally did, it was almost like an otherworldly experience. My friend Robin Greevy put it really well, the glass artist Robin Greevy, when she said, when you're pregnant, it's the only time you have more than one heart beating in your body. So when my daughter Sophie was when I finally had my first child and Sophie was born, things went wrong and she had to be revived. And she was without a pulse for almost 20 minutes. And afterward, we didn't know if she was going to survive or grow up in a wheelchair or be mentally handicapped. And I became obsessed with wanting to make sure that she didn't stop breathing. So when this strange phenomena started happening when I slept at night, where I was so tired, but my mind would stay awake while my body fell asleep. And I would have this strange sensation of rising up out of my body that was so amazing and felt very familiar, even though I couldn't remember doing it before. And it happened every few weeks. It was a very profound thing for me. And I thought I really want to try to capture the feeling of those dream experiences by making some sculptures about them. And oddly, through Instagram, I have gotten many messages from women who have seen these pieces who have said that when they were new mothers, the same thing happened to them. So I guess it's a thing. So my kids are getting older now, and they still are endlessly entertaining. And I make pieces sometimes based on funny things and interesting things they do. And that's everything.
Thank you so much, Christina. That was great. And we should say that some of those pieces that were in there are in this exhibition as well. We can, for those of you who might be interested, we can then maybe point some of them out. I'm going to ask Robin to maybe please show us her work at first so everybody can see a little bit more of what she does. So first we will see a presentation that you gave, Robin, is that right?
Yes, I'll start it. I'm going to screen share. As a fine art photographer, I only want to photograph animals. With the exception recently of rescued flying fox bats, I do not do wild. Editorial editors have taken a chance on me for animal-oriented assignments. All have included people. Photography has been my passport to connect to specific animals, to see their living circumstances and unique interspecies relationships. These experiences are paramount to my photographing. I am educated every day by the New York Times photographers as Victor Blue and Hilary Swift and so many other contemporary photographers, usually viewed on Instagram. But now I am only showing my early influences in this presentation. I was born attracted to cats and primates, and I painted them. I stole neighbors' pets thinking I was saving strays. My second book, Dog Watching, is about my obsession with specific breeds in their environments and hanging out with dog packs. At 19 years old, I identified even more with strays after my father died and my mother lost our home. My Pratt graduate teacher told me to photograph what I cared about. Captively bred primates ranging from gorillas to marmosets were published in my first book, Like Us, Primate Portraits. I am especially drawn to animals coexisting in urban places. In 1987, I photographed Arabbers, men with a long history with horses. They reminded me of my grandfather, a junkman with a cart horse. We connected on an animal level, and they liked my photographs. I was thrilled to ride a horse on the streets of Baltimore. Mary Ellen Mark photographs fascinated me. I wrote to her in 1990 on the back of a large test strip of a monkey. She invited me to show my portfolio at her studio and sent me to 5 people, including Peter Howe, the editor of Life magazine. This serendipitous photograph of my daughter Amelia and Ricky was the beginning of my 18 years of photographing my daughter with animals. As a new mother, I was overwhelmed with a dying mother, proving myself for a university tenure track slot and not wanting to be separated from my daughter to go on shoots. I did not think it was respectable to photograph my child until my graduate teacher advised me to continue. The Aperture Foundation published my last 2 books, Amelia's World and Amelia and the Animals. Rousseau was my childhood painting influence. Under pressure, when I photograph, I must brainstorm and shoot fast and go with the flow of the animals and not stress anyone out. No one is trained. When the animals or my daughter were done, the shoot is over. Not until I photographed the swimming pigs in the Bahamas for a New York Times Magazine Voyager assignment did I realize Rousseau was still in my head when I included Amelia in the landscape. Photographer Sally Mann's dedication gave me the willpower to continue photographing Amelia despite being advised to stop. With encouragement from National Geographic, I have learned not to engage with negative comments and not to quit what I love. I am learning to tolerate those who judge me and do not know my circumstances. Philip Halsman's photograph of Salvador Dali had to be the influence here. Our cat, Hannah, really did like flying. My girls are both brave, tolerant, and smart. Our not brave or coordinated Sphinx cat child, Jacob, played it safe in his cradle. Deer have been a reoccurring theme for me. I identify as a deer in the headlights, especially as a parent. From the beginning, Amelia had an unspoken, low-key manner with animals. Fashion is now a component in the new work with 2 rescued primates. Here, Emily is a 23-year-old capuchin, and Baby, approximately 12, is a triple amputee from a dog attack. The loving caretaker who adopted Baby needed to track down the veterinarian who butchered the amputation at the knee joint, as well as her leg and part of her tail. Baby is a petite macaque who falls asleep in Amelia's arms when I photograph. The story of rescued foxes bred at a coat fur farm was published in National Geographic. The rescued bobcat was an outtake. This is part of my Guggenheim Fellowship project on caretakers and those they rescue. I am attracted to specific looks. These are my current dogs. I love this unique rescued gray-headed flying fox bat with a genetic mutation. Again, the Guggenheim Fellowship enabled me to go for my dreams and photograph rescued flying foxes in Australia. My first photographic hero, Eugene Smith's work, is in my head. His empathy and respect of whom he photographed guides me to photograph caretakers. This rescued flying fox bat with his broken back being devoured by maggots did not survive. I always think they will make it. Some died in my hands. A Time magazine editor believed in me for this story of Travis, 30, a veteran, and Ziggy, 29, for the story Strong and Smart. Service monkeys give a helping hand to people with quadriplegia. Travis, medically fragile, was home alone during the day. Ziggy saved his life multiple times, as in retrieving a dropped cell phone so Travis can call for help. I am thankful to the editors and curators who trust my eccentricities. That's my presentation, so I don't have to talk as much.
That was great. Thank you, Robin. And will you show us the
This is my website, and my portfolios, my fine art work is here, and my editorial work is here. But mainly, what people seem to know me for is this work of my daughter, the 2 Aperture books. And I never thought I thought my main work was my primate work. And when I started photographing my daughter, I was really encouraged at school where I work to stop it. And it wasn't until my editor at National Geographic told me, like, it's good, keep doing it. And it gave me, I don't know, it gave me faith that I was okay. And it taught me to never tell my students if they're really into something not to do it. But these are some of the pictures. Amelia talked to this elephant and just went up. They had a relationship. It's not in the book. And then we went back to see her again when Amelia was older. But Amelia is very calm and has just a way with animals. And, you know, our dogs were her siblings. I had a cat brother, so she had cat and dog siblings, just being an only child. So these are some of those pictures. This is a two-faced cat, a Janus cat. Amelia and Frank and Louis were the same age. He died at 15. There's various animals, but at 10, Amelia sort of got bored. And I asked her what it would take to keep her going. And she said monkeys. So that's where the monkeys came in. And this is the newer work because she's older. Amelia's 21. She's at Wellesley College. She's a senior. She's finishing. She will have a virtual graduation because of COVID. She's a Madeleine Albright Fellow. She's really smart, much smarter than her parents. And this is the newer work. I'm not gonna, you know, this is Christina's gig, so I'm just gonna go sort of quickly. And lastly, I think what we really have in common is this love of monkeys, Christina and I. And Christina reached out to me through Instagram. I was going through chemo in July 2019, and I stopped talking to people on the phone. I didn't talk to anybody, but I DM'd with, messaged with people on Instagram. I think Samantha is here from Wired Magazine, and she also kept me company, but I didn't talk to people till March, like from July to March, really. I was pretty out of it. This is the monkeys. If you want to see it, it's on the website. This is my older work, which I thought was the work that people were interested in. And in the end, it's the Amelia work that I'm known for. And that's about it.
First of all, thank you so much for being here. But I really appreciate the idea that you say that animals and interspecies relationships have always been the motivation in my long-term projects. And also the world that you and Amelia explore is one where the lines between human and animal overlap or is blurred, and where animals are part of our world and humans are part of theirs. That you and Amelia play out fantasies that explore your eccentricities to create a cultural space in the photographs where animals not only coexist with the humans, but also interact as full partners. And I think that that is something that your and Christina's work shares. And I really would love to hear both of you, Christina and Robin, say a little bit about that.
Okay, well, a couple of years ago, as you said, I came across some photographs of her work, and it just really resonated with me, and I just loved it. So I contacted her because I thought, you know, it would be really. There was one piece of, I think I showed you, Katya. There was one image of Amelia kneeling with an albino deer, and I just thought, oh, I would love to make a sculpture, like, you know, inspired by that piece. And Robin was very gracious. I had no idea that we would end up becoming friends, but she was very affable and open to that. And it was just really, it was really fun. We write each other at night and talk about all kinds of things, not just animals, but she is a kindred spirit, and it makes me very happy for Instagram.
And Robin?
I haven't really met anyone I have animal friends that I connect with, that I relate to, but I haven't met another artist who inspires me and I admire, but who's also an animal person in the same way I am. So I feel like Christina is part of my tribe. And one of the things we do on Instagram is we send each other pictures. And I like that I'm never embarrassed about what I like to show her. She doesn't, you know, she sends me the same kind of level of pictures. And I feel like that's a bit of a private club that we're in. And it could be cute stuff, animal stuff, but I feel like, you know, I'm not judged for my eccentricities, because I try to keep those eccentricities under wrap for teaching. So, you know, I appreciate having Christina there, because I only first talked to her this week because of the gallery. We've only DM'd on Instagram all this time. We never talked on the phone. And she really kept me company when I was very sick, and I appreciate it.
Well, that's wonderful. I do have a couple comments here. Somebody is saying that they like your eccentricities, and then somebody else has a question, which is, why did people try to discourage you from featuring your daughter in your work, do you think?
I was at school and I was on tenure. I wasn't on tenure track yet, and I realized that people who maybe are non-artists make decisions about what's morally correct. And I think now a lot of people photograph their kids. I think I'm a generation photographer that, you know, I had my daughter late, but they just didn't think it was proper, and they let me know because they were my superiors at work. And I think Elizabeth Chris just joined from National Geographic, and I'm always thanking her, and I don't think she really gets it, but you know, I couldn't believe it when she cared about my work. And I was pretty beaten up. Being on tenure track is a bit like having being hazed, right? It's not pleasant. And so she really made a difference. And because National Geographic, I spoke there, all of a sudden I was okay at school. Like it's really like a snowball effect when people pay attention to your work.
Yeah, it's amazing when you are supported, and I think Christina knows that also, right? Christina, I mean, I know you didn't bring this up, but 2 years ago or 3 years ago, there was a fire in your studio, and you had all this support. And I think people show, you say it in your statement for this exhibition, in the part that I read, which is, you know, that that you collect moments throughout the day that remind you that life is a gift and that happiness is available even in the dark times, like this past year was.
Yeah, when we had the fire, it was devastating at first, but then there was so much love and support. Stephen King gave me a grant so we could help rebuild the studio. It was incredible. Like, just the idea that he actually saw my work and supported me was amazing. And just people, collectors and other artists and people I'd never heard of, like even artists that had no money at all were sending me checks for $25. And I remember thinking, how can I be upset? All I really lost was stuff, you know, but I'm so loved and I had no idea. So that was like definitely a huge silver lining.
That's great. And so Christina, could you talk a little bit about the work that you made now for this exhibition, and first of all, how long did it take to make all the work that's here?
This is pretty much everything I've made since the fire.
Mm-hmm.
And so
I was in August of 2018, is that right?
Yeah. And so I had a slow start because it took me, you know, glass is expensive to work with. You have to have kilns and grinding tools and air compressor. And so I kind of got things a little bit at a time. So I started out pretty slowly, but this is pretty much everything. And I realized after the fire, I had this moment where I was up in the ashes. The fire kept burning for about 2 weeks until we had, actually it kept burning until we had a big flood. But I would go up and sit among the ashes and try to reclaim glass, because I have really nice glass from Bullseye, and it was dirty, but I was able to grind it off. And the sun was setting one night, and I just had this thought, you know, I could just never do art again and it really wouldn't matter. Like, why am I doing art? And it just came back to that feeling I used to have 3 or 4 years old, were much fun making stuff. And I thought, you know, I was talking to my friend Irene about it, who's the painter, the painter Irene Olivieri. And it just seems like as an artist, the best thing you can do is just to make art out of joy, out of just because it's fun. So with these particular pieces, I was really thinking about making these pieces for myself, pieces that would make me kind of happy.
So we have some audience comments here. Somebody wants to know a little bit more, Christina, about the figures inside the figures. Are they always just references to kind of pregnancy, or are they more than just that?
I think that I've always been.
I shouldn't refer to pregnancy as just that. But yes.
No, it's fine. There, when I was trying to have children, that did play a part, and I think I was trying to do creative visualization or something. But I think more I'm just trying to show that we all have an inner being. The thing that I am the most interested in my work is trying to show what's beneath the surface of the appearance of something. We all have this appearance, but it's not who we really are. And glass kind of allows me to suggest that there's so much more to us than just what's there in the surface, that we have an inner beingness.
Mm-hmm. An inner beingness. I like that expression. And actually somebody here is commenting that a lot of women artists incorporate their children as part of their work, and that is something that both you and Robin share as well. There's a question about how long have you been good friends with your albino deer?
About 6 years. I haven't seen her since this hunting season, and 6 years is kind of a long time for a deer, but I'm still hoping. Every time I see her, I go into an altered state. If I'm usually in the car and I lower the window and I say, "I love you. You're so beautiful." And my kids say, "Oh my God, Mom, who does that? Close the window. It's so embarrassing."
Robin, the white deer that was in your photograph with Amelia.
If it's pied, Pied. So if it has blue eyes, it's pied. It's not albino.
I see.
And they have a mix, sometimes of white, sometimes with red and white. And they're easy targets for hunters.
This is a technical question for Christina. How do you recuperate your beeswax, Christina?
We just put the dirty beeswax. Once it steams out of the mold, it's disgusting, but it's expensive. So we put it into crock pots and then just turn the heat on high, and the wax floats to the top, and you can just skim off. You lift up the wax and just kind of scrape off the disgustingness that's come out of the molds, and then you have, workable wax again.
How do you make the color choices for your pieces? Is there meaning in the colors that you choose, and how much can you control them?
I'm really drawn to this erbium pink color, as you may see in the
I see a lot of it around me here.
Right. When I was starting out, I used to stay awake at night and think, do we need 2 cars? Could we sell? How can I used to dream of erbium pink. I just whatever colors I'm really drawn to. And I like the very light translucent colors because they kind of change depending on the lighting.
But in some pieces like those like the wreath-like pieces that are in this exhibition, like the snowflake and the ring around the rosy, there's also a lot of kind of jewel tone colors that have been kind of combined together, like greens and blues and purples.
I'm just playing. I'm just, like finger painting kind of.
Okay. There isn't any particular meaning.
No, it's kind of an intuitive process. I don't really think about any of it intellectually. Mm-hmm. Sometimes after the piece, I'll try to attribute meaning to it, but usually I make the pieces based on trying to capture a feeling that I have.
And somebody said, somebody's asking, you say you are self-taught, but it's such an involved process. How much did you have to figure out yourself of the process?
I'm not completely self-taught. I took a 5-day workshop at Corning on glass casting, and then a year later, I took a 2-week class at Pilchuck Glass School. Glass artists are so generous. I'll see them at an event and I'll say, how do you combine opaque glass with clear glass and have it not crack? And then they'll say, well, blah, blah, blah. So but most of it's like being a private detective and trial and error. But if I can figure it out, then that means pretty much anyone could, because I'm not very technical.
And I actually meant to ask Robin. So Robin, it's interesting. We always talk when we were talking about the book and the imagery of the images, but not the format necessarily. Do you, when you display the work, how large are those photographs?
They're 20 by 24 or a bit, like there's two sizes. There's 20 by 24 and 40 by 60.
Wow, 40 by 60 is pretty large.
Exhibition size, but lately I had a show in Photoville, which is this Brooklyn thing, and so they were a bit smaller because we had a trailer, but the editions are 20 by 24 and 60 by 40.
And we should say that there will be work featured of yours in an exhibition at the Fotografiska Museum in New York. Is that right?
No, it's Stockholm. I sent you the letter from the museum. I feel a bit overwhelmed with teaching, so I don't always read the contracts, which sounds stupid, but it's in Stockholm.
I see.
Unfortunately, but I flipped the information to
well,
you.
For anybody on this call who is going to Stockholm, the exhibition is going to be there in September. Is that right?
Yeah, that's what they say.
Well, there you go. There's a reason to go to Stockholm. We have some more questions here. This is for Christina. Are the castings entirely glass, or do you have ceramic components like the heads? And that is a yes, right, Christina?
I use a lot of adhesive afterwards. Only glass can fire with glass because it's not compatible to ceramic or anything else, as far as my experience has shown me.
And then somebody's asking a little bit, if you could talk a little bit about the painting on your pieces.
I kind of, for me, they add another layer of narrative. I like looking at things in terms of different levels of our perception. And to me, it's a way of tying the ceramic parts of the glass to the glass. It kind of makes more of a flow. And also it just sort of adds more of a storytelling quality to it, I think. And I went to school, that's the only thing I have actually studied is painting. And my mom was a realistic painter. And so I have a lot of training as a painter, and it's a way that I can still do it.
Does the painting sometimes take over? Like, do you feel like it's something that sometimes kind of runs off?
I do sometimes think that maybe the pieces are more pure and simple and less complicated and without the painting, but then it's usually too late. So
it seems like it's never too late, like come out right in the end. I also wanted to talk a little bit more about this idea of portraying what we are other than our physical beings. Can you explain that a little bit more? Can you explain a little bit more of what you mean by that?
Being alive is so amazing. It can't just be only our physicality, and I think we all have experiences where we experience other. We experience other states of consciousness. I don't think those can be discounted because I think we're more than just our bodies. I think we're connected to everyone that we've loved, that we've lost. And before my twins were born, I had this lucid dream where this elderly couple came to me and they told me they were going to be my twins. And I didn't even know that I was pregnant with twins. And I was 44, for God's sakes. And I told Robert, and he was like, oh my God, because he knows how I am. And I've always had dreams like that didn't really make logical sense. And I got in a lot of trouble for it as a kid when I would talk about things that I perceived and sensed. And, everyone told me that it wasn't possible. But as I've gotten older, I've just sort of taken this attitude toward myself of warts and all. It's just part of who I am. And I think it's part of who we all are, really. And I think because I know for me, I have my experiences in my life. I have my children. I have my life. And so my art is kind of like an outcropping of my life. So it's all kind of autobiographical.
I've heard you say this before, and I think it's important for everyone to hear because I think you do a great job of explaining it. And sometimes I think the audience sometimes feels a little bit, right. struck by the pieces, and they are not sure whether they can kind of let themselves go along with it. Yeah. Or whether they are maybe frightened of it almost. And I think that it's that dichotomy in the work that, is good to understand from your point of view.
I never try to make people uncomfortable. I don't want to make disturbing pieces. I'm really just trying to make pieces that make me feel good, that make me happy. But I think when you do figurative work, people take it very literally.
Yeah.
And so if my intention is something more metaphoric or symbolic, I think people can look at it and have their own take on it and feel offended maybe when that's not my intention.
Is there any particular piece that you feel particularly strong? I mean, I know that's terrible. That's like choosing your children, but
Those are two of my favorite pieces, the mother and children piece. And yeah, and I think it's like for the mother carrying the baby on its back, it's just that idea that once they're in our hearts, we carry them forever. Our children, no matter how old they are, they're always our babies. Even, it's almost like when I look at my children, my son is like 5'11" suddenly. He's this huge hulking man, but I still see the baby and toddler. It's almost like there's little versions of him all around me, and I know that I'm always going to be carrying him around with me. I can't be happy if he's not happy.
Is that sort of what the balance piece is also about?
The one in the front, and then the one in the back, my daughter Violet is a gymnast, and she often spends time inverted, and just that idea of staying in balance and trying to keep everybody together and balanced. And I had a lot of fun with that piece.
Robin, when you work with your daughter and with the animals, do you feel that there is a sense of equalizing the different worlds, or?
I've written about this, that I think that we're all animals, and it sort of reflects just what Christina said, that we're similar. The woman that I photograph, Emily and baby, we're all the same. So in the new work, or the newer work, where I have them in clothes, it's about them being the same. And I know that sometimes, it's not acceptable to put animals in clothes, but I have two dogs. I have a Whippet and a Chinese Crested, and they have winter coats just like I do. And it's fun. I think a lot about how men have sports, and everything that men do is acceptable, and they wear, like, their pajamas or their basketball shorts, and everything that men do, golf, is acceptable. And I have a lot of friends that dress up their dogs, and they're made fun of. But I think it's just such a double standard for women, who baby their animals, and I do this, and then men could do whatever they want, like sport wise. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So I think we're all the same. I depend on my dog, especially since I've been, under cancer treatment. She's been a fantastic support. I don't know if I would have gotten through it without my cats and dogs.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, my husband, is there too, of course. But he works, he's an artist, and he does his thing all the time. My animals just lay there with me. They're going, "Oh, you're in bed. That's great. Let's just stay in bed all day for weeks." So, they're very supportive.
And we have some very nice comments for both of you on these answers. One from Beverly K, who says that your glass work is like a meditation, Christina, and feel the love and peace in each work. And Robin, I love your combination of your daughter with all the animals. There's an undeniable connection, and it's powerful work. So definitely those were answers. I think that people feel that. I just think that sometimes you, as the artists, are in the vanguard, ahead of the rest of us, in kind of being able to express that and help us find it, see it, and share it. So we really appreciate that.
Oh, thank you. I'm not as articulate or spiritual as Christina. I feel like, my influences as a kid and as an adult were children's books. I think I'm a frustrated illustrator, and I'm interested in illustrations, and I think I try to play that out in the work. But all the animals that are with Amelia, she had to get along with them, and so there was that connection. I don't want them to be props. I want them to be sort of her equal. Like, there's a connection, not just like sitting there, but her dealing with them and talking to them. Eye contact. Like, like a real connection.
Well, I think that your work is incredibly articulate. I think you're articulate too, but I think that your work is incredibly articulate, and that's what matters very often.
Yeah.
So thank you.
I agree.
And both of you, I'm going to just say that I will raise my glass
Yay.
to Christina
Thank you.
and to Robin. Thank you for joining us, and to Christina for this incredible body of work in a year that has been just fraught for so many of us, or all of us, with just endless, worldwide problems. So thank you for channeling all yourself and your spirit into this.